Jibium had just finished showering and was about to call an escort to kill time late at night. But the moment his hand touched the bed beside him, his expression froze. His face drained of all color. He yanked the blanket away and discovered a corpse tightly wrapped next to him. The dead man was his own younger brother, Min-jae. Before he could even scream, a woman suddenly appeared and stabbed Jibium directly into the third vertebra of his spine. Calmly, she asked if he could still move. Then she pulled out a heavy metal chain and wrapped it tightly around his neck, tightening it again and again until he lost consciousness. When Jibium woke up, he had already been labeled a twisted killer. By then, police officers had surrounded the entire building. But when they stormed the room, he was already gone. 15 years earlier, Jibium had been suspected of being a serial murderer responsible for 7 deaths. However, due to lack of solid evidence, he was convicted for only 1 murder and sentenced to 15 years in prison. The verdict shocked the victims' families. They were devastated and believed justice had failed them. The police chief stood before Jibium and coldly told him, "In 15 years, I'll be waiting for you outside." Among the crowd was a young girl silently watching everything unfold. Her eyes were filled with pain and rage. Her name was Hiju, the daughter of a police captain. 3 months earlier, Hiju's father had stayed late at work, covering duties for the chief. On his way home, he crossed paths with the killer. Severely wounded, he struggled to crawl back, desperately wanting to see his daughter one last time. That day was her birthday, and he had promised to celebrate with her. The next morning, a fellow officer brought a birthday cake to their home, only to find a horrifying scene.
Hiju did not cry.
Her gaze was eerily calm as she held her father in her arms, believing he was only asleep. 15 years passed. The police chief had grown old, and the first thing he did was wait outside the prison gates. When Jibium was released, the chief warned him to stay out of trouble, saying he would personally send him back behind bars. By now, Deong had become the new captain. Hiju had also grown into an adult. She appeared gentle, kind, and deeply loved music. She dreamed of standing on stage, playing the violin. In her spare time, she volunteered at the police station without ever complaining. Sometimes, she would sit on the rooftop, watching her mother, who had remarried nearby, and quietly smile to herself. Her mother had abandoned her and her father when she was young. For years, Hiju never felt a mother's love, and eventually, she lost her father too. Thankfully, the officers at the station treated her like their own child. They protected her, helped her, and even shared part of their salaries with her. This continued for 15 years. To everyone, Hiju was a perfect, innocent girl. But no one knew it was all an act. From the moment her father died, Hiju's heart had gone cold. Hatred was what kept her alive. For 15 years, she lived only for revenge. Finally, her opportunity arrived. Jae, a man recently released from prison, immediately went back to his old habits and contacted escorts. After one encounter, the woman angrily returned to her car, complaining to her handler that she had met a sick man obsessed with control and fake weapons. Hidden nearby, Hiju witnessed everything. She wondered who had begun carrying out the revenge.
죽을래? 네.
She had waited so long for. Soon after, another former convict committed a murder. Because of the similarities, suspicion fell on Jibium once again. But hotel surveillance showed no proof. With no evidence, the police had no choice but to release him. That same night, Hiju witnessed her mother being abused by her current husband. She calmly warned him that his end was near. He laughed it off, calling her insane, and told her not to interfere with his gambling debts. Hiju replied that he was the one who should disappear. Later, she knocked him unconscious. She whispered that in certain countries, violence and robbery were still punishable by death, because the law treats everyone equally. The next day, his body was discovered by pedestrians, drawing a massive police response. Coincidentally, Jibium passed by while exercising. The murder method was identical to the one used to frame him years ago. He instantly realized someone was setting him up. Then he noticed Hiju hiding among the onlookers. Her goal had been fulfilled. The rest was now in the hands of the police. Just 2 days after Jay's release, 3 more murders occurred. The chief was deeply troubled, yet powerless without evidence. When one plan failed due to lack of a weapon, Hiju decided she would no longer rely on others. This time, she would do it herself. The second killer was a ruthless man named Minsik. The knife in his hand had taken the lives of both animals and people without hesitation. That night, he headed to the hotel where Jibyum was staying. What he didn't know was that Jibyum had already prepared for this meeting. However, neither of them expected the police chief to arrive and disrupt everything. Elsewhere, Hiju believed that if her stepfather disappeared, her mother could finally live in peace. But the moment she opened the door to her home, her world collapsed. Her mother lay lifeless on the floor, having taken too much medicine in despair. Hiju froze. She sat silently in the corner, biting her nails, unable to process what had happened. Her mother passed away quietly that night. After returning home, Hiju replayed the murders in her mind. By carefully analyzing the wounds, she realized a shocking truth. There had always been 2 killers. One preferred stabbing, the other slashing. The truth was finally clear. Minsik and Jibyum. They had grown up together and even fallen for the same woman. As children, their twisted fascination with hunting slowly evolved into something far darker. When Jibyum discovered that Minsik was betraying his girlfriend, he murdered her without hesitation. Consumed by grief and rage, Minsik turned Jibyum into the police, giving investigators the opening they desperately needed. At the police station, Hiju secretly accessed Minsik's records. She was now certain he was one of the killers. That night, when Minsik returned home, the house was completely dark. He searched for a candle, unaware that the floor was covered in shattered glass. His cold, emotionless expression revealed his true nature. Suddenly, the lights turned on. Sitting across from him was Hiju. After killing Minsik, she moved his body into Jibyum's room. Then she ambushed Jibyum and recreated the murder scene, carefully framing him once again. The police arrived and arrested Jibyum on the spot. Believing her revenge was finally complete, Hiju felt a rare moment of happiness. She booked tickets to a music performance and prepared her dress and jewelry, dreaming of a normal life at last. But she didn't know that Jibyum had survived. Before the police arrived at the hotel, he had already regained consciousness. Pretending to be a victim, he escaped from the ambulance and later contacted a reporter, insisting that he was innocent. With no evidence left, the chief had no choice but to let him go. Hiju comforted the chief, quietly saying that evil survives because good people are powerless. She was mocking the justice system. She had captured the killer herself, yet the law still let him escape. Meanwhile, Jibyum went to Minsik's house, replaying everything in his mind. Someone had killed the person he wanted dead and framed him for it. Digging deeper at an internet cafe, Jibyum uncovered the final truth. One of their past victims was Hiju's stepfather. The victim's ex-wife was Hiju's mother. Everything suddenly connected. The cafe owner sensed something suspicious and reported it to Captain Dam. Jibyum stole a police car, returned to the station, and impersonated an officer to obtain Hiju's address. But Hiju was already waiting. She knew that once Jibyum discovered the truth, he would come for her. When they finally met, she calmly asked if the killer who preferred stabbing was Jam, the man who murdered her father. Jibyum confirmed it. He even praised her ability to deduce the truth. Of course she could. She had waited 15 years for this moment. Facing Jibyum was never her final goal. Her real plan was to lure the chief to this location. She called him, then quietly waited at a nearby park, sitting on a swing. Hiju told Jibyum that he was the reason she became this way. Then she wrapped a heavy chain around her own neck. For Hiju, true revenge wasn't personal satisfaction. It was watching the law finally destroy the man who ruined her life. Even if it meant sacrificing herself, she was determined to make Jibyum bear the blame for every death. All the murders would now fall on him. Jibyum was stunned. For the first time, he realized there was someone far more terrifying than himself. Before he could react, the chief arrived with the police and arrested him. 15 years later, Jibyum stood in court once again. This time, the verdict was final. Death sentence. After everything was over, the chief entered Hiju's room for the first time. The walls were filled with hidden notes, plans, and memories, a silent record of a broken girl's 15-year obsession. Only then did he truly understand her words. Evil wins only when good people can do nothing. The story ends here. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.